Welcome, everyone. We are going to present the panel on burned investors. Boy, doesn't that sound cheery right there.
It's such a positive spin right from the get-go.
And remarkably, Ben would like a positive spin, as you point out, and has asked Seattle's curmudgeon to host this panel. I am Warren Etheridge, host of The High Bar, founder of The Warren Report, co-founder of the Film School. Happy to be here. We have some amazing guests. Here we have the fabulous A.J. Epstein, who's an artist, producer, and theater owner west of Lennon in beautiful Fremont. Round of applause. Filmmaker, producer, woman about town, founder, Madam President of Von Piglet Productions, and the director of Ira Finkelstein's Christmas, which is going to be one of 8 new Christmas titles available in 6,000 Walmart stores this winter, holiday season.
October 29th.
October 29th. So,
I never thought that was going to be my dream, but...
So when I make my annual trip, I've never been to a Walmart, but I guess for this, I'm going, marking my calendar now. Next to Sue is Gar Godfrey. He's an actor, producer, the founder of Game House, Inc., just started a new iPhone repair business, Hunky Dory Repair, and is here because you have produced a bunch of local features, including David Russo's Immaculate Conception of Little Dizzle and Cthulhu. Round of applause. You seem like you want to give a disclaimer already. We'll get to that in a second, but hold that thought. On the end there, he is not the security for today. He is the one person in the room who probably is legitimately employed. He's a entertainment lawyer. Please welcome Duncan McFarland. We said, really, you got to... Wow! The lawyer. Who knows? Very, very nice. What? It's a fan club. It's fantastic. I know you always draw a nice big room when you're talking about money, and that is what we're here to talk about today. Specifically, how to get money, what to do with it, and how to choose where to spend your money. We're talking about both sides, both the investor side and the filmmaker side. And it's very tempting to use that notion that the relationship between an investor and a filmmaker is like a marriage. It's like a marriage. You have to be that thoughtful. Certainly that's true. But we're also going to look at the part which is divorce. How wrong it can go and how you may pay for it for years. So to that end, AJ.
Yes.
Have you been happily married?
Well, I just, I suppose I'll speak closer to the microphone. I've put money into projects that have not been successful, and I felt really good about that because it was people making art that I believed in, and they weren't screwing me. They were being on the up and up, and maybe it just didn't happen. But I've also put money into projects that were fraudulently managed and selfishly managed, and everyone was lied to. And Robin Hood, Robin Hood complexes were at work where anyone who has money is bad, and anyone who's an artist is good. And there's Does that answer your question?
that does.
Yeah.
I sense that there'll be some more stories later.
Yes.
Gar, now it's time for your disclaimer.
Well, yeah, I think I was adding this up. I've actually invested in around 9 or 10 films in the Seattle area in the past 5 or 6 years, ranging for anywhere from $5,000 to $500,000, and there's a lot of interesting things that go on. I think I've been lucky, and most of those actually got made into films that were finished and watchable most of the way through. So I mean, in that sense, it is going out there. It's funding something. It's adding something to, to the culture, to the environment. It's creating jobs for people. In no case did I get anywhere close to paid back my investment. But and there's a bit of a conflict there in the marriage, because the marriage, talk about it as a marriage. For the investor, because these films aren't returning a lot of money, the producers aren't getting paid until investors are paid back, which doesn't usually happen. The producers, the filmmakers, are on to the next project before investors have been paid back. The investors really have to be responsible for trying to keep working and getting that original film to pay itself back, which usually involves, of course, hiring lawyers and suing people.
That's where you come in, Duncan. Yeah. Do you have to sue a lot of people, or you're really more of a, you seem more like a marriage counselor somehow?
I see my role as being more like the marriage counselor, because lawsuits, the only person that wins in a lawsuit is really the attorney or the attorneys, and the most of the problems that arise with that result in needing the counseling are preventable up front if people understand what they're investing in, and if so much of it has to do with paperwork. If you have the proper contracts in place and you protect your investor on the way in, then there won't be problems for you as a filmmaker on the way out. But
my advice to people is always that you need a lawyer before you need just about anything else, because if you have the right paperwork, you're going to be a little bit safer.
yeah,
right?
it's trust me, doing the I'm litigating a matter right now, but the cost of solving a mistake through the courts is exponentially just ridiculous compared to if they just sat down, read what they were agreeing to, and just come to, the meeting of the minds, just come to terms that this is what I want, this is what you want, and having to do it through the courts is not what you want. Yeah.
Well, Sue, let's talk about you. You've made Ira Finkelstein. It's going to hit and take Walmart by storm. All of America is going to be purchasing its first Jewish movie. I'm really excited about that. Thank you. But you are also now in the process of trying to make a sequel to that, and you are trying to round up investors and money, and you take that job seriously. I've seen part of that process. What is your responsibility to the investor?
Well, I would like to only be a filmmaker, but unfortunately that's not the fate that I have been dealt or that I've accepted. So I have a fiduciary responsibility, and this isn't just a moral responsibility, it's a legal responsibility. And your legal responsibility, obviously, I'm always surprised when we come to panels in Seattle and we talk about having the right paperwork, because well, of course. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. I mean, of course you're going to go to a lawyer and have proper documentation and stuff, because a film investment goes around the SEC and you have to have the right paperwork. So actually with my film investment, the majority of my investors are fairly happy. They've gotten some small checks. They're coming in on the second film. They look at it as like a second round in a company. With what I've been building with investment is I've kind of had to go out in the world and look and talk to venture capitalists and also angel investors, and I've actually won a couple of investment forums for angel investing. So I've taken it very seriously, and it does keep me up at night, because you don't want to fail your investors, and you have to keep. I'm glad I have a holiday film, because I have years to still kind of be recouping the funds, whereas a one-off movie, it's a lot harder if you don't hit it, which is, as we know, really hard to hit it really well on the outset. So, so I mean, you're a fiduciary, legally and morally, and you're obligated to your investors. What I've found is that when you tell the truth and you are as honest as you can be, and you take hard questions from your investors. Some of my investors are VC and angel investors, so they've actually helped me go back and look at my financial planning, and sometimes I've changed some of my financial planning because they asked some really hard questions I hadn't thought about. Does that answer it? Okay, good.
Good start, certainly.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure that many people in the audience feel like I do, that I revere the work you do here because you are a working professional, have done it for a long time, and have been committed. And one of the things that separates you is the fact that you could use the phrase fiduciary responsibility, which you don't really hear coming out of most filmmakers' mouths. Duncan, I saw you smiling when Sue said telling the truth. Is that just a phrase that seems so foreign to you, or?
I was just thinking, it's what our parents have taught us. Just tell the truth, and if you be upfront with people, and you'll do just fine. And it's true. If you
and on the marriage part, I think that when you tell the truth and you don't try to gloss things over, you find the right people to come into your project, people that you actually really like, and they like you, and you usually can work things out. If you find the wrong people or try to convince the wrong people to come in on your project, then things get all out of whack.
If I could just follow up with a question, You mentioned some of your investors are angel and VC grade investors.
Yeah.
How do you find that? Because those are professional investors, they're accredited. It's a different grade of individual. Do you
Well,
also,
everyone's supposed to be accredited that comes in on a film investment.
unless you come in under an exemption.
Okay.
Yeah, there's exemptions you can, yeah.
I haven't gone there.
If you have any money, we can figure out how, there's an exemption out there. But, so you don't work with unaccredited investors?
No.
Okay.
No way.
You can raise a lot of money with unaccredited investors.
I know, but the family and friends thing just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, no.
That's Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That's donations. That's fiscal sponsorship. That's different to me.
Wow. Gar, you've said you've invested anywhere between $5,000 and $500,000 in a film. Is that correct?
Right.
And that's a nice range. And I know there are people who are smiling back there. 500,000.
Yeah.
Don't
I could
forget
make
this is
10
called
films for
Burned.
that. That's right. How did you make those decisions?
Well, I'd say I started high and kept going lower and lower as time went on.
That is a pattern.
Yeah, you probably have seen that. Now, because what I find is dealing with filmmakers has been really good. I don't think I've really had conflicts with the people I've invested money with. Where the conflicts come up is now you've got a distribution deal and all the distributors are crooks. Essentially.
Just in a general.
Just in a general way, they're all lying crooks.
So, but once again, no problem on the filmmaker side. No
I
problem
haven't
with
had
the
any
businessmen.
conflict with the filmmakers. No,
No.
It's definitely distributors who won't even tell you how much money you haven't made.
Right. So how do you think you protect yourself against that? Now that you've experienced that.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, it's spreading the risk is part of it. I mean, that's why I've gone to smaller investments, maybe a larger number of films and projects, and I don't feel particularly, like any particular one is a loss. I think, Sue managed to get a great distribution deal that looks like, as far as we know, that they'll pay when they owe money.
Right.
We'll see.
They've been paying.
Wow, I like it. A little cynical. I like it.
He's right. I mean, they're reputable, but you
Right.
have to stay on top of them. And that's where the good agent and the good lawyer comes in.
Right.
And first, maybe as an investor, helping your filmmaker negotiate with good lawyers and make good distribution deals.
Right.
You
But
know?
I'm surprised, Gar, to hear you say this. I mean, you founded Game House. You sold to Real Networks. I assume you did fairly well on that deal. You're clearly a responsible, intelligent businessman, and you're telling me that you don't know how to defend yourself or protect yourself in dealing with these movie investments?
Well, we have had to go to court a few times. When it's cut and dried, payments that are clear. And we hadn't, and we went after their distribution. We contacted the HBO and other things, and basically can garnish what is being paid to the distributors, and you can get back very minimal payments. But to get real detail, there's things you can do. You can do the audit. Exactly. You can pay for the audit, risk paying for the audit, and see if they even bother keeping any records.
Okay. You've had some issues in the past, AJ, which have happened before we got to the distribution level. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you want to ask a more? Do you want to
No,
ask a more
I'm
specific question? Or do you want
giving
to?
you as much freedom as you like with that one.
Well, it's interesting talking about distribution because I went in on a project a couple years ago, and I'm going to name names. It was Greg Lashow and the film company. Many of you may know him or heard of him. And it was a total Seattle rah-rah, let's go. Let's make films and let's go. And I was, and this was not the first thing by any stretch I had invested in. I had been doing, entertainment investing for a decade at that point. And it was an ambitious project in many ways, and the paperwork looked better than anything I've ever seen before. And the paperwork was completely fraudulent. I was shown I was shown numbers from a sales deal that never happened. and the money that I put in, which I was told was going for various post-production and finishing and legal expenses, actually went to pay off someone else on another project. So and there's the projects are still mired in the couple of the films that got made still can't even be seen. The people, the filmmakers themselves can't even show them publicly. So I'll answer a more specific question if you want.
So what do you? So you just write off that investment essentially?
Well, I mean, you don't go into entertainment investment or any investment, and not be prepared to write it off. I mean, if you actually think that, if you're basing anything on, I need this money out to do X, Y, or Z, you're in the wrong industry. You're doing the wrong thing. Film, and I do a lot of theatrical investment. That's actually, I spend a lot more time in the theater world than in the cinema world. But you can open a restaurant, you can open a theater, you can make a movie, or aim for a Broadway musical, and you're going to have more fun getting your friends together and throwing a suitcase full of money in the middle of Times Square. What was your question?
I'm just intrigued by the Times Square. Let's get a Kickstarter campaign going for that.
Yeah.
So that's a very specific case because it deals with fraudulent behavior or something like that. But it seems that a lot of the times the problem that filmmakers have or film productions have is that the paperwork isn't fraudulent, it's just misguided, right?
Yeah, it's misguided, and and I've certainly cut filmmakers and people some slack for making a mistake or two. It's when you're doubling down on your mistakes and escalating the lies. That's where I felt really burned, and that's where I've had to get together with other investors and sue. So, yeah. Well, in the one case with the film company, the paperwork that I was given looked so solid that a couple things on the periphery of my due diligence didn't get done because I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I have to own that to a certain extent. But then I went in good faith with Mr. Lashow and tried to guide him to, it's like, well, if you do this, you can't say this to the investors. He was changing share prices, arbitrarily. He was not telling the other shareholders that he was bringing in more investment or taking out loans. He was taking all of the money into his own personal bank account. And as I would find these things out, I would go to him and say, you can't do this. And he'd say, oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. And so I was doing my best to work with him, to educate him, to protect us all. And it wasn't working. But I should say, I don't want to be all, Mr. Negative. I've worked with other producers where it's like, hey, you can't do that. Oh, great, okay, and it got worked out. So my one bad experience, I could, I can talk forever about it. But yeah, I mean, it is a cautionary tale, because I am not, I'm not a rube. I wasn't Pollyanna about it. I just made a mistake in my due diligence, because I saw something that looked, fair.
So you said that you'd rather just be a filmmaker, but you have responsibilities beyond that, right?
Right.
And AJ learned from a mistake, certainly. Did you learn from earlier mistakes to be more of a producer?
Yeah, I think I learned that I've invested in films too, so I see your side of things for sure. From my side of things, I think the filmmaker has to you really have to find an awesome team of agent, lawyer, and hopefully producers that go the distance with the project and that keep you from making early mistakes. I think as a filmmaker, one of the earliest mistakes and one of the things I've learned from is trying to get the film out too quickly. I think, pulling back, taking some time, being careful how you let out the film, because everything in Hollywood it's all perception. The truth is you could have a great film, and if it's out the wrong way and it's not fresh, you know how this is. It's like the minute so-and-so passes on it, everyone, you have to have a really great agent and producers that have a ton of experience that build this mystique around your movie and that you kind of like flush it through the system to get a good sale and that it's fresh. Because the minute it's not fresh, you've already your potential for profit goes down, So I think on the producing and filmmaking side, there's a lot to be learned about timing and being really careful, pulling back, having a team, and figuring out how to get that film out so you can get the best possible deal. And having a reputable agent and a reputable lawyer, that's part of the perception. If the agent isn't one of the top 5 agents and doesn't have a 20-year record in Hollywood, it's really hard to sell your film and get a good price. And it doesn't matter how good your film is. And you can make a stinker and have a great agent and sell your film for a nice amount of money. So it's all perception. And that's been my lesson, to slow down and really figure out what's your market, how are you going to push it out there. I want to make more films. If I lose everybody's money, then the potential for that goes way down.
Right, and
I'll be on Kickstarter.
And maybe that's what we've seen in the Seattle area. I mean, it's a sort of a musty stat now, but Seattle at one point had more millionaires per capita than any other major city, with over 27,000, but the money wasn't necessarily coming down to the film industry because so many people had been burned over time. How do we repair those relations? How does the Seattle filmmaking community convince the Seattle moneyed community that it's worthy of some attention?
Well, you're not going to, there's a lot of the community you're not going to convince. Like people who are in technology, I mean, they're in technology. If you have a film that maybe is crossing technology with film, and there's web series, and you have a really unique plan, and there's a gaming component or something, that might be different. You have to attract investors that's in the point in time for them that it seems like a good business. Just people invest in different stuff. Some people only invest in tech. Some people only invest in aerospace. They have rules. So I wouldn't try to convince somebody who has rules. But within those investors, there's people that are going to invest in their regular investments, but there's a lot of investors that always keep one project that's a big risk and that's interesting to them. Like some of my investors love being on board because for them it's really interesting, and they bring in other angels and other VC and they talk about well, how could this be good? And what they do like about it, and I do want to say this because we need something positive, a lot of investments, the waterfall where people are getting paid back, they could be 4th, 5th round, way down at the bottom. At least with good practical film investments, investors are paid back first, usually up to 120% on the waterfall. Not like a studio project. A studio project, I have a friend who invested in Terminator and never saw a dime because way down on the waterfall. So there's things that will interest professional investors. Finding them is hard.
Finding them is hard. So you invest in 9 or 10 local films, which seems like a lot because
he's crazy.
I can't think of 9 or 10 local films that I necessarily wanted to see over that period. But oh, I'm kidding. I love them all. So
several. I think a few are not out yet, but yeah.
Yeah. How did you pick those? I mean, if it's like a marriage, it seems like you were sort of speed dating through the community.
Well, I did look at it as marriage. I got to the point where it really was more of a, first date kind of thing. So with the lower investment amounts, it's easier to just kind of say, all right, let's see what happens with this group. Maybe they've done something in the past. Maybe you've got a director, or it's a script that's more interesting, kind of a different approach. So I think at the lower end in terms of dollars, it's not. Almost think of it as a donation. It's not as you don't get yourself into society as if you contribute to the Seattle rep and get your name on the wall or something like that. You get your name in the credits and there's no status attached to it necessarily. Whereas you do it where it's a pure donation to the arts. But I did kind of start to look at it just more as contributing to the art community in Seattle.
Nice thing. Let's talk about business plans. How many people have actually seen a good business plan in town for film, besides your own, Sue?
Hey, I've seen a few. In town.
Yeah.
I've seen some.
See, it's trickier.
I've seen some, but I've seen really crappy ones out of LA too, and I've seen really crappy ones out of New York. So I don't know.
Who do you need to put together a great business plan?
Who do you need to?
Yeah. Who's going to do that? Who does that work for you?
Well, I've done it myself, but on the next project, I have a producer he's a financial guy. So I wrote the plan, but then we've reworked it. And we talk to agents and get sales numbers and then base the plan on what our strategy is, But I wrote my first couple plans because that's how you learn, right? And then you get it, you get somebody involved who knows better and really looks at it, and a lawyer. A lawyer would be good.
Do you want to comment on business plans that you've seen?
Well, what I was thinking of with regard to that is where I see a lot of filmmakers get themselves into trouble is you want to make your movie, and we're used to the idea that, well, I can make it for this amount of money, I can make it for that amount of money, and a certain amount of that is true, but you can get yourself in a situation where you can't make it for this amount of money. And you also, because with this, I like to look at it from the point of view of distribution. How are we going to get the investors' money back? And that if you work through the numbers, you get to a price point where in order to, this genre of film is going to be able to return this much money. And therefore, we have to make it for less than that amount of money. And it seems really obvious, but I see a lot of people raising money and then producing a film. There's no chance. I could tell them from the get-go, there's no chance your investors are getting their money back. Why are you doing this? Well, it's going to be a great film, and we want these, all these extra shots. It's like, don't you want to make a second movie? You've got to get your money back for your investors because they are affording you this opportunity. So, to this end, and sorry for the long answer, but line producer, don't burn your line producers. Everybody's got a friend, and it's the line producer is the one you're saying, well, just help me out, crunch these numbers, just get it to me on Monday, and they'll do it once or twice, but they get burned just like investors, and you don't want it making your movie, or you've told them that your budget was going to be, $20 million, and then you come back, what can we do for $1 million? And if you just told them that up front, they could have given you a budget for $1 million. So I think it's just a lot of responsibility. Really try to figure out how much money you're likely to raise. Can you make your movie for that? And how would you make it? And then how do you get your money back to your investors?
The budgeting part is tough enough for filmmakers, right? But the other element of that is assessing how much money you might actually make on the film. So I see a lot of business plans where the comps are out of whack. Yeah. Like, this compares to Blair Witch Project, Titanic, and Inception. It's going to be just like that. But who's there to actually put the brakes on and say, what's more realistic is...
Well, you should be talking to your foreign sales agent and your domestic agent. Yeah. The comps you can make comps look like anything. Right. I would say for comps, though, get a third party. Like, don't make up your own comps. Like, go get a third party, because what they're going to do is take high and then weigh lows to get into the median of what you're really going to be looking at. So third party comps, I think, are more reputable than you making up your own. Right. And then actual sales numbers, and then you're refining it. Like, when you're getting investors involved and you've greenlit your project, well, now you get your cast. And when you have your cast, then you relook at your numbers again. Because, like, if we have this cast, what can we sell the movie for, right? Because what if you find out with that cast right now, I mean, we all think so-and-so is a great star, but right now, what are they making? What are they bringing in? And keep looking at the numbers as you go.
I have a question.
Yes. Mr. Marks.
Not familiar. What's a comp?
A comparison. You're comparing your movie to other movies and what they brought in on VOD, DVD, theatrical, and whatever your plan is, a comparison of that so that you can see what the high and low numbers are.
Just curious, Gar, what was the comp for Zoo, the story of the Enumclaw horse penetration story?
Let's see, I'm trying to remember if there were any, if the comps, I was just going to say, I usually skip over the comps.
Best question.
It's a loaded question.
Because I don't find the comps very valuable part of the business plan, because it is always just like, there's like the top 3 independent films, and you eliminate the bottom 5,000 that made nothing, so on average it's low. But yeah, I don't remember. It was...
Is it Water for Elephants?
It was... There was some other documentaries.
Okay, excellent. Yes, Peter Barnes from Clatter and Din.
Thank you.
Co-founder, president, post-production supervisor. To repeat the question, to ensure transparency, once you made the distribution deal, what do you do? How do you protect yourself?
Yeah, I'll say just in my experience, there's two things we got out of distributors with respect to that. It is, rights to audit, and the second is some sort of limit that they can put on their miscellaneous expenses, or on, in terms of what they spend. You can set a cap on what they'll spend. Otherwise, you come back with a bill for, that's happens to be equal to whatever dollar amount they made.
Travel and energy.
Yeah.
And quarterly reports.
Yeah. You can put in the contract. I mean, you can put in the contract that they'll give you quarterly reports. In my experience, out of three I know of, none of them sent us quarterly reports on time, according to what was doing the contract.
You didn't say which quarter.
Yeah.
Duncan, do you have a amendment?
So when I negotiate these agreements, one of the areas I negotiate heavily is miscellaneous expenses. And I go down to, you are allowed, coach seats on airplanes, and you are allowed a total of this number. Like, I'll try to get into the details of that they cannot. The simplest way of doing it is if I can get them down to an actual dollar amount, because I don't care how you spend the money. All my client is going to give you is this amount. Typically, they want more flexibility in there because they want to be able to take the film to different markets. So they have a justification. But I also realize they're taking multiple films to the market, and they're going to be charging everybody. So
you're talking sales agent, not distributor.
Well,
right now.
They're kind of synonymous these days.
Really?
Yeah, at least what I find. 'Cause sales agent, I appreciate that because I'm trying to use the term synonymously between sales agent and distributor, because I just find that they're kind of.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, a sales agent is there to get you a deal with distributors that are taking the movie and putting it out, and a sales agent is going to take a percentage of that, right? Mm-hmm. But a distributor, I mean, they already have the lines of distribution. Of course, there's going to be percentages and stuff out of that, but they're not going to be going to AFM and all that stuff necessarily.
Well, perhaps no, because I agree with that. I guess so. If you're looking at just straight getting your money, because I was talking about a sales agent. Because that's the one that the filmmaker.
Because they really rip you off.
Yeah, the sales agent is the one that you're going to be interacting with. And as far as getting the money from the distributor, I still look at that as getting money from the sales agent.
Got it. Okay. All right.
And because I'll just give you an example. Film gets picked up by HBO in a foreign territory. It runs, and then we do get the occasional report showing that the money is owed. But and by HBO, and it's awkward that this is being filmed, but it's just that it's not the HBO you're thinking of. So yeah, but it's just that there's no real ability for this filmmaker at the dollar amounts we're talking about to force the hand of the sales agent to go after the distributor for the amount of money owed, and so it was a matter of simply being patient, and HBO did pay. But they paid in their own time.
In their own time.
Yeah.
I wanted to comment on that because that was something that I kind of learned from selling, and I think with the sales agent going after the distributor, and I don't know if this is what you're talking about. One of the things that I did is. There's two ways that a sales agent might work with you, and that is that they're going to represent you, and they're going to become sort of your power of attorney, and they're going to make all these sales, and then maybe collect the money in a compact cam, always in a compact cam account or something, so that you can kind of see what they're getting, and it splits directly to you. But that's a very bad deal. So the kind of sales agent that I have and that I would always want is somebody like from the Gersh agency, so sales agent like that. And they get you a distributor, and your lawyer's involved, and any distribution deal you're doing is getting negotiated in every territory with you involved, so that they're not just being like your power of attorney and making deals and you don't know what's happening, and you're not seeing contracts. Does that speak to that at all? I mean, do you know what I'm...
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Even with the sales agent, with the, a lesser sales agent, that's one of the things I would put in your agreement is that you want the right to, regardless if they hit the minimum guarantee or not, that you still have the ability to at least see the agreement.
And agree to it.
Well, and agree to it, yeah.
Because if you don't get that, they will make agreements with people that you have no idea. You're like, you sold that for what?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
AJ, you're nodding. Is this something that you were not in the loop always when you wanted to be, or?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just being shown numbers for, or people doing deals to sell a film, or to a sales agent to give them an exclusive right for all of Europe for a film, but there was a loan attached to that, or there was an advance attached to that with a super high percentage that the investors weren't told about. Loans being taken out that the investors weren't told about, that completely encumbered the projects. That was that nodding was for. Yeah.
So how do you protect yourself now? Do you just want to see everything?
Yeah, you just need to see everything. You have to have, somebody mentioned the right to audit, and that's, and you just have
And
to.
negotiating your split, with your distributor, you want like an 80-20 split. Like, to have low splits, you're never going to see a dime, and the low caps on costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the DVD deal that we negotiated, we negotiated it down to what is the cost of each DVD that you get to charge us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, then all of a sudden you sell all these DVDs and then you're only getting $1 on a DVD or something, so.
So the question from the actor, Tom,
Yeah.
is his friend made a horror film and
And
is
is getting
getting
ripped off.
is getting ripped off by
Right.
even major corporations.
Oh,
No corporate
imagine
integrity. Sue Corcoran for the
I
blog.
think this all comes back down to relationships. The truth is, as filmmakers, and until you become a famous filmmaker, you have no relationship with the distributor. Because for them, they want to get as much money as they can out of a movie. So you need somebody representing your film who does have a relationship, who's an agent that has multiple films with them and has a relationship, and lawyers that they have relationships with, because they just want to make a ton of money, and if they don't care if they ever see you again, But if they have to answer to somebody at an agency, if they have to answer to Megan's agent, that's going to protect Megan. So this is where this all comes. This is why filmmakers get ripped off, because you're just one of so many filmmakers. We all want everyone to see our movie, and then they're going to just make the money off of you, without somebody representing your movie who has a relationship with these distributors. That the distributors, they have a reason not to screw them over.
The question is, when you're working with a filmmaker not as good as Megan Griffiths, not as
Right,
kind,
not as
giving,
awesome.
and responsible,
Right.
how do you repair the relationship if it goes south? Is that translating it properly?
Yeah, it's a tough place because you can have a choice between you've got a film that's 75% of the way done, and do you just write it off and say, well, it's not going to get done, you didn't do it for the money you said you were going to do it, or do you provide more money in terms of a loan, let them dilute it? As an investor, if you're in there, you have little choice but to allow there to be some dilution or to take on loans. Otherwise, you're looking at zero. But it's the kind of situation where very unlikely to invest with those filmmakers again.
I have something to say. I don't think that's the worst thing that a filmmaker can do. I think it's the worst thing if they just don't know how to budget. But sometimes you get into a situation where that's a very justifiable increase in the budget, because it can become, it's money for marketing, or it might bring in bigger names, something that can actually make the numbers better for the film, which is hopefully the reason you're increasing it. And I do think that filmmakers make mistakes, and I think it's really easy to do that and end up having to increase on your first movie, especially if you were trying to really hit some low numbers. But I do want to point out that other investments, other than film, do this all the time. I mean, there are many rounds in tech industry and in different companies, and there's constantly companies needing to go back and get more money. I think it's better for a film to hit its budget, stay on task. But if you are going to increase the budget, it's hopefully because there's a reason for it that you can increase the value of the film.
I want to jump in. A couple things. One, kind of with pride, is Megan, your question actually. I sat down with Lacey about 5 years ago, and that was the only advice I gave her, is just, make sure you're preparing the crew, and everyone who's basically doing it for pizza, beer, and points, they're prepared for when you have to take out that $20,000 loan or investment that's going to dilute them. So thank you. That was awesome. But also just knowing that very often in independent film, your initial investors are essentially, your family and your crew and your cast, because they are doing it for pizza and beer. And just being upfront with them that, we may have to dilute this. And so it's a little different than, just going back to your investors. It's making sure that the people that have a huge emotional stake in it are prepared for, the ups and downs, because, sometimes you need that extra 10 grand for, prints and a sound mix, because, it's got into a festival that has, higher deliverables or something.
There's a question I'd like to translate, but I would call my lawyer at that point. So, Duncan.
The questions, it has to do with business entities, and when you're considering different entities, which one fits well for an independent film. The typical purpose of a business entity is, for indie films, has to do with limiting liability. So I tend to be looking at, well, how many investors are you going to have? Who are these investors? What are their relationship to you? Are you a producer, writer, director? Is it a producer and then writer, director team? It kind of depends where you are, or are you a much bigger entity? And then, and I'm not really going to answer the question, just so you know, because it's so fact specific. That's what I'm trying to paint a picture. It's very fact specific. It really depends what is going to protect. I always look at it, how are we going to protect our investors? Because ultimately, what they're agreeing to is, I'm agreeing to give you this. I'm not, you have to make sure that you can't touch anything else. And so I look at that as our goal on the filmmaker side, is we have to protect the investors. And typically, the LLC, you don't want them to be partners, because partners.
That's kind of my question, whether or not they actually become partners or not.
Partners may create the illusion that they have more involvement, but the more involvement that they have starts opening the door to liability. Because if you're a passive investor, you can say, well, I gave them this, and that's all other than that, I just sat back. The more involved an investor becomes, it opens the door to the possibility of, well, were you really the filmmaker? Are you the one that created that fraudulent act? Or
Stole this piece of music?
Yeah, stole that piece of music. Are you that? Where are you in the loop?
So it's not a cookie cutter approach to it. Get a good lawyer to understand and help you understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the one thing, we all know that you can form business entities online. The challenge is making sure you're doing the right one, and the bigger component of that is the operating agreement, because there are default provisions in the statutes that simply, if you don't have an operating agreement, the state has one for you, and it's not going to protect you or your investors. And that's what you're really looking for. Is it's not simply which entity do I pick. It's, well, let's make sure we have an operating agreement that's really going to protect everybody.
Thank you.
And some investors actually read those operating agreements.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't.
Yeah. Read, and if you read everything.
That's weird.
Read everything.
Read everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Can you recreate the magic of thrift shop with the benefit of Macklemore with a movie?
My thinking on this is
Put
simply
Macklemore in
each one of us has talents and abilities, and you take Forrest, who's sitting 2 seats from you, and he has a tremendous amount of talent in marketing and other things. I don't mean to sell you short, but so someone with his talents might have that ability, and then I think that's more what you're looking at, is one of those lightning in a bottle situations where you have the right song, the right whatever it is, and someone also understands how to market.
They had a management group that knew how to social media market.
Yeah.
And did a massive blast and got mass coverage.
I don't know.
Well, I actually, you can't compare the music business. I mean, you can compare the music business to the film business in that there's a nexus of it both in Hollywood, and a lot of people are getting fucked. But other than that, the actual structures of the business are so different, and the distribution. I mean, yeah, a lot of it is online, but it's a completely different business model. And film is a song is just this 3-minute thing. A song is more analogous to a YouTube cat video. A film is a whole different thing.
But you still, to get into all the video on demand outlets, I mean, it's really hard to do without somebody doing it for you. Like just even getting stuff on iTunes without somebody behind you, it's just really hard, I mean, that's the question of, do you want to make one film and spend the rest of your life trying to sell it? I mean, it's just like, it's overwhelming.
It also helps to have someone like Macklemore, who's so charismatic.
Put him in a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Naked.
Downloaded 440 million. I can call it Sixth Mile.
Yeah. No, I think it is very different. I think that it'll happen to somebody to some point, to some extent, like with.
And hopefully you'll have invested.
Yeah. No, I'm sure I won't. It'll be the most obscene, outrageous, unworkable idea you've ever heard of, and it will explode. It won't make any sense. It won't be a narrative film. It'll just be ridiculous, and it'll explode. But it's not something we can predict and control. Something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, I could foresee something.
Yeah, but
That's
just
a Hollywood film.
But it's not. It's a Hollywood. Yeah, I mean, don't be fooled. A lot of the stuff that are huge hits have huge distributors behind them, huge marketing teams. They're not necessary, and they and great sales agents that get them into the festivals and position them the right way. I mean, there are those things that somehow get in, but they're a lot less than you think. There's usually a lot of power behind stuff. Even with a hit on. Even with a YouTube hit, if you watch the TED Talk with the guy from YouTube, the head guy about what makes a viral video, it's not because the video is good, it's because it has something that works, and then it hits a tastemaker, like somebody like Jimmy Fallon or somebody else tweets about it, and then that's when it spikes. I mean, you guys, we all think like the internet, yay. But it's all still marketing, and there's all still huge studios and distributors and stuff behind all of this. I mean, really, there just is.
Okay, I'm cheery. We have time for one or two more.
But that can be a good thing.
Yeah.
Make your relationships. God, have an agent like Megan has, man. Look at these. These guys are doing awesome, and yeah, their careers started without all of that. But like people, people smell the money. They're going after the Mels and the Megans. You know what I mean? And when they come after you, let them and make a good deal.
Wow, nicely done, Forrest. Beautiful closing question. One piece of advice to make the marriage better between investor and filmmaker. Duncan, start us off. Hire me.
It's no. It really comes down to you have to have an agreement in place that's a real agreement, and where the parties understand that. Trying to give a succinct answer because I want to go into deal points of like this is what you're looking for and these are the things you have to have, but we could be here for a very long time. But it's really taking the time to negotiate the relationship, because that's what you're doing is we are going to work together for several years, and I want to have and these are the terms of our relationship, and this is why it's going to be successful. And I think that it's all too easy to kind of skirt past that when you're in the honeymoon phase. And you simply have to really look at it, and look at it from when you're doing your due diligence. Think about, I spent a lot of time with the what ifs. What if this doesn't go right, or we were going to have these problems? How do we address it now so we don't deal with it later? So that's.
Yeah, I would say, if you're looking to raise money, I think, you have to go beyond just selling it as a financial investment, because every investor is going to know it's not going to be the most sound financial investment. It might work, you could buy a lottery ticket and you might win too. But it's a lot different than buying a lottery ticket, because you're getting something out of it. Something's being created, and so work on that. Work on why this story, why this project needs to happen. What is it going to do to change society? Is it going to make society better or worse? Play to their their morals, play to their likes. Find someone that really has an interest in the topic that you're making something about. And play to that, and have the financials be a bonus.
I'm kind of echoing Gar's thing. We've talked a lot about financials, but why make the project? And I would say honesty, and then once somebody does invest, keeping them informed, giving them a quarterly or every 6 months write-up of what's been happening, where the movie's at, what you think is going to happen, keeping them in the loop, really keeping them in the loop, keeping them informed.
I would say for the investor, I would say understand you're not going to get a lot of ego strokes. You're going to get to go to a premiere, you're going to get your name in credits and possibly on IMDb, but don't expect a lot, of personal petting and attention from the producer, because they're really busy and they're trying to work really hard. But you should expect them to be working really hard, and that's that. But for the filmmaker, I would say know your capabilities, know what you're really good at, know what you're not really good at, and you need to be honest with every single person about that. And if that requires a year or two of therapy, hey, great, but just know what you're capable of.
And I'll close out with a little thanks to each of you, and I'll say that they represent what is true about this business, is that there are going to be some good times and some less than good times. It's how you handle those that are important. Down at the end, we have Duncan McFarland, who actually has burned his bridges with HBO today, but will keep working as your lawyer, doing what he needs to do. And I can't say it enough, get a lawyer, get a lawyer, get a lawyer. The best thing I've ever done was finally find my lawyer. Gar Godfrey, thank you so much for investing in all that you have. You'll probably... You may make more repairing iPhones than you did off Cthulhu, but God bless you. So keep at it. Round of applause. Sue Corcoran, who could easily be jaded, still tells the lovely thing of tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. And on October 29th, you can support her by going to Walmart. I can't believe I'm using this phrase.
It'll be everywhere, too. You don't have to go to Walmart.
But 6,000 Walmart locations. Come on.
I don't even know where a Walmart is.
Go to Walmart, bring your camera, and take some interesting pictures.
Yeah.
Good idea. Maybe
Drive into the desert, you'll find one.
Yeah. and finally, AJ's advice, other than not working ever with Greg Latchow, would be keep at it. You've done so much for the city and done so much for the theater. Support West of Lenin up in Fremont. Thank you so much for all the work you do. Round of applause, everybody.